This is Real News Media TV, coverage you can trust. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates. Trelawney man who opened a fire after heated argument charged. A man who shot at two others following an argument in Hyde District, Clarkstown, Trelawney on Sunday, March 6, is now facing several charges in relation to the incident. Charged with 2 counts of shooting with intent and illegal possession of firearm and ammunition is 47-year-old Lambert James, otherwise called the Blacks of the community. Reports are that an argument developed between 2 men and James. While leaving, it is alleged that James pulled a firearm from his waistband and pointed it in the direction of the men and fired several shots. The men reportedly ran to the Clarkstown police station where they made a report. James later turned himself into the police on Friday, March 11, with his attorney. He was placed on an identification parade on Friday, March 18, where he was positively identified by both men. His court date is being finalized. Men traveling on motorcycle caught with a gun. Following explosions heard in the Kingston 14 area, the police on Friday arrested 2 men who were caught with an illegal firearm after they attempted to elude officers on a motorcycle. The men were arrested at the intersection of Perry Street and Oxford Street in the parish. Reports are that about 12:40 p.m., a team of officers were on patrol when they responded to explosions heard in the area. On their arrival, officers accosted 2 men on a motorcycle who attempted to elude them. They were searched and a Mac 11 9mm pistol with a magazine containing 13 cartridges were found. The men were subsequently arrested. Their identities are being withheld pending further investigations. Convicted Jamaican drug smuggler sentenced to 10 years. The authorities in Antigua and Barbuda have sentenced a Jamaican man to 10 years in prison on drug-related charges. The police report that Everton Pinnock was convicted on 3 drug-related offenses following a drug bust in July 2020 when Pinnock, who was then 55, and another man, Patrick Burrell, 49, were jointly charged with possession of 59.75 pounds of cannabis, drug trafficking, and importation of cannabis. The controlled substance was found in vacuum-sealed packages hidden inside television boxes which were in a container addressed to Burrell. Pinnock was reportedly working for and living with Burrell at the time of the offense. However, the charges against Burrell were subsequently dropped due to a lack of evidence against him. But Pinnock's matter made it to the High Court, where he stood trial before Justice Stanley John. In his testimony, Pinnock, now 56, claimed that the drugs were sent to him in a barrel by his nephew, but he was not informed until it had been sent. At some point, he introduced the Burrell to his sister, who lives in the United States, and she began sending items to him. Pinnock claimed that on one of the occasions, his nephew called him and told him that he had sent some weed in a barrel and it was in transit. His police statement also indicated that he had spoken to his nephew in an earlier conversation and told him that he knew someone from whom he sourced the weed. The accused lawyer, Wendell Robinson's main argument in closing was that Pinnock did not arrange for the drugs to be sent, but was told about the dispatch after the fact. The prosecution rebutted, saying that the very fact that Pinnock admitted that the drugs belonged to him and were sent to him is enough to convict. Justice John agreed that there was enough evidence to convict the father of 7, and whether or not he was told of the drugs after they were already sent was of no consequence. In delivering the sentence, the judge said that the Jamaican embarked upon a plan with the aid of a relative in the United States to import a larger quantity of cannabis into Antigua and Barbuda. The judge said the charge of the possession of the controlled drug carries a maximum sentence of 7 years imprisonment. He, however, used 6 years as his starting point and went down to 4 years and 6 months upon considering the convict's previous good character. For importing the drugs, the adjudicator's starting point was 8 years out of a possible 10 years sentence, and 5 years and 6 months was his final decision in relation to that charge. having considered the aforementioned factor. As it relates to drug trafficking, Pinnock was sentenced to 10 years behind the bars and was also fined $50,000, which will result in an additional 15 months being added if he fails to pay the fine. Drug trafficking carries a maximum sentence of life imprisonment. The sentences will run concurrently. 5 arrested, illegal gun and money seized in St. Catherine. The police last night arrested 5 persons and seized over $700,000 in Above Rocks, St. Catherine. A motor vehicle was also seized. The police reported that about 8:30 p.m. they received the information about suspicious activities involving a motor car with persons aboard. A roadblock was set up along the Above Rocks main road and the Toyota Axio was intercepted. The police say the vehicle and the occupants were searched and they found an illegal gun and a large sum of money. The 4 male and female occupants, who were said to be from the Above Rocks community, were then taken into custody. Market for Portmore to be built in Gregory Park. A location has been selected in Gregory Park for the construction of a modern market in Portmore, St. Catherine. Minister of Local Government and Rural Development Desmond McKenzie has made the disclosure while addressing a community meeting in the Gregory Park Square on Friday. McKenzie said the state-of-the-art facility will be built on a 12-acre property to meet the need in the Portmore area. We will be building a modern market, and this market is for the benefit of the people of Portmore. Gregory Park has been chosen because the lands are there. We have the location right here, he said. McKenzie informed that further details will be provided when he makes his contribution to the sectorial debate in Parliament. For his part, Mayor of Portmore Leon Thomas said the Portmore Municipal Council is giving up lands for the market as the authority is in support of the development. Member of Parliament for East Central St. Catherine, Orlando Terlong, said his constituents welcome the new development. As a government, it is not our intention to box food out of anyone's mouth, but to provide an orderly way in which persons can sell their products and persons can purchase their necessary items, he stated. Meanwhile, McKenzie informed that Gregory Park has been selected as one of the communities in Portmore to be a part of the Paint the City, Paint the Town project. The initiative is aimed at generating employment as well as beautifying and upgrading town centers. Changes to be made at polling stations to accommodate disabled persons. Director of Elections Glasspool Brown says several changes are being made to polling stations to allow easier access for disabled persons to vote. He says this is part of a wider initiative which also includes more training for election workers. This is in the context of the new Disabilities Act, which took effect on February 14, that imposes duties on the owners and operators of buildings to provide certain access or equipment. Brown explains that the changes include modifying furniture and other infrastructure. It's an opportune time for us in that we are preparing for the local government election. A part of that preparation was to develop a training video with the Disability Association, but we will now incorporate their recommendation in short order to allow persons in that grouping to be included in the training aspect of things for election day workers. He also gave details on plans to address aspects of physical infrastructure at the polling stations and said this can be completed before the next local government election. We have sought overtime to ensure that our polling stations are on the ground floor. In excess of 90+% of our locations are on the ground floor. There were some concerns about the height of our voting booths. What we will be doing is providing each polling station with clipboards, so rather than them being required to be at the height of the booth, they will be given clipboards and stay behind the booth but at a lower level. He also sought to address the proposal from the disabled community that ballots be manufactured in such a way that blind persons can vote anonymously. But he said that legislative changes will have to be made. That, to a certain extent, might involve some adjustments, but it is something that the commissioners suggest that we look at. We have roughly 7,000 polling stations across the island, so we will have to look to see how that can be rolled out. It is something that we will certainly look at, and over time we will look at the feasibility, he said. $1 billion allocated to hire teachers to assist the students recover from learning loss. The government will allocate $1 billion during the upcoming fiscal year for the employment of temporary teachers to help students recover from learning loss experienced during the disruption of face-to-face classes. This will be primarily facilitated through the Ministry of Education's Extra Lessons program. This was announced by Prime Minister Andrew Holness during his contribution to the budget debate on Thursday. Mr. Holness said since the launch of the program, 2,100 students have registered for the online teaching method, while 11,926 have registered and are now engaged in the face-to-face extra lesson classes. A further breakdown of the registration shows that 6,175 are secondary students, while 5,751 are from primary schools. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates.